So the last time we concluded the third chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. The third chapter dealt with the impossibility of remaining without action, and that action is superior to inaction, that it is impossible to avoid karmic consequences by not acting, that one should not be a hypocrite while abstaining from action and then thinking of it all the time. It also then affirms the karma mimamsa philosophy or darshana, and it affirms the need to perform Deva Yagya, which I have discussed in detail last time, the time before last. And lastly, the Bhagavad Gita in the third chapter talks about the main issue that prevents us and from advancing spiritually and which takes us entirely into sin, which is strong desire. And this strong desire, which comes out of sense gratification and the desire for sense gratification, I discussed last time when we concluded the third chapter. So today I would like to talk about the fourth chapter, which is an important chapter. And it's an important chapter because Bhagavan declares himself in the fourth chapter. In the fourth chapter, Krishna declares that he is Bhagavan. Some of you who are being misled by studying various philosophies on Bhagavad Gita should understand that if you read the Bhagavad Gita in its entirety as it is, you will find that the Bhagavad Gita is very clear that this is the song of God and Bhagavan is Krishna. And if you don't accept Bhagavan as Krishna and you think that he is just another self-realized master, or that he is a yogi who has become very powerful, then you better stop studying Bhagavad Gita and go back to whatever other books your teachers are teaching you, because they don't understand Bhagavad Gita. Very clearly, Krishna points out that Bhagavan is God and that is Krishna. Arjun also declares it. And in addition to this, the Bhagavad Gita also declares that we are all an ansh, a fragment of the God. We are not God and we cannot become God. Anyone who has these foolish ideas should immediately stop studying Bhagavad Gita and go back to whichever books on philosophy they are following. The Bhagavad Gita very, very clearly points out that Krishna is God, and this is introduced in fullest aspect in the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So, in the fourth chapter, Krishna begins by saying that what I am teaching you now, this imperishable science of yoga, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Imam Vivashvate Yogam, Proktavan Aham Avyayam, Vivashvan Manave Praha Manu Ikshvakave Abravit. Arjun, you are not the first one to hear this message of how to engage in this imperishable science of how to reunite with God. I taught this to the sun god Vivashwan, and then Vivashwan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind. And Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. So Krishna is pointing out that this message of Bhagavad Gita is not unique to Arjuna, but it has been given before. And then he says, it was thus passed on by word of mouth. Evam parampara praptam. It was passed on by word of mouth from one saintly king to the next saintly king, from one sage to the next sage, from one guru to his disciple. And unfortunately, Krishna points out, in course of time, it became Chinese whispers. The succession was broken. And therefore, having become Chinese whispers, finally what has reached is completely confused and the original message has been lost. And this is now being revealed by me to you. Sa evayam maya te adya yogah prokta puratanaha bhakto asi me shakha cheti rahasyam hi etad uttamam. I am telling you the science of how to reunite with me, God, because you are qualified to receive this knowledge. The qualification being that you are both my devotee and my friend. And because you are my devotee and my friend, you can understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Bhagavad Gita is not meant for everybody. It is meant for those who are qualified to hear it. And what do you mean by those who are qualified to hear it? In the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna actually tells Arjun that this message should not be given to certain people. Bhagavad Gita is not to be studied by everyone. It is not to be passed on to anybody and everybody. You are not to go around repeating this message of Bhagavad Gita to all and sundry. Do not speak to random people about the Bhagavad Gita. There are certain qualifications and there are certain disqualifications. What are the disqualifications? In 18th chapter, verse 67, Krishna points out, Idam te na tapaskaya na abhaktaya kadachan na cha shushrushuve vacham na cha mam yo abhyasuyati. This message should never be explained to those who are not inclined towards austerity. Don't go to a cocktail party and talk about Bhagavad Gita. Don't go to a brothel and talk about Bhagavad Gita. This is not meant for sense gratifiers. It is meant for people who are naturally austere. Do not repeat this message of the Bhagavad Gita to those who are not devotees, those who are not devoted. Na abhaktaya kadachan. Do not speak about the Bhagavad Gita to those who don't want to hear it. Might sound funny, but the fact is, people are told to preach, 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 and they go around preaching to people who just don't want to hear it. And Krishna clearly says, Ashushushove vacham. Those, it should not be spoken to those who are averse to listening about this subject, the spiritual subjects in the message of the Bhagavad Gita. And he says, those who are inimical of me, those who are envious of me, those who have a negative attitude towards Krishna, don't ever repeat the message of Bhagavad Gita to them. People who say, Ghar mein Ram, gali mein Sham, and this kind of people, just stop talking to them about Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is meant for those who are Krishna's devotees and Krishna's friends. Krishna clearly points out. What does he say? Krishna clearly says that I am telling you this because you are my devotee and my friend, and this is repeated in the Bhagavad Gita. When you are devoted to Krishna, then you are qualified to hear about the Bhagavad Gita. If you are not devoted to Krishna, you are disqualified. And Arjun is one step further from being devoted. He actually considers Krishna as his friend. So Arjuna is confused. Isn't the sun god older than you? How can I understand that you have parted this message of how to reunite with God to him? And Krishna points out to him, Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tavacha Arjuna tanyaham veda sarvani na tvam veda parantapa. Many, many births have we passed, both you and I. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. Now, this is an interesting point mentioned here that Krishna and Arjun have both passed many, many births. Because when the Bhagavad Gita first appeared, in many ways, Krishna and Arjuna were identified, or Arjuna and Krishna were identified with the two sages, Nara and Narayana. And these two sages, Nara and Narayana, were supposed to have reincarnated once again in the form of Arjuna and Krishna. So here, Krishna is saying that many births we have passed, you and I have passed, but you don't remember them, I remember them, because you are Nara, human being, and I am Narayana, I am God. So human beings do not remember their previous births most of the time. Of course, there are many, many examples of people who have recalled their previous births, and there are many scientific studies that have been done on this. And the whole school of parapsychology in universities is dedicated and devoted to this. But even these people who remember their previous birth, most of them, by the time they're 5, 6 years old, they forget their previous birth. But God is all knowing. And because God is all knowing and He knows everything, past, present, and future. Vedaham samatitani vartmani cha Arjuna bhutani cha bhavishyani mam tu vedna kaschana. I know the past, I know the present, I know the future of all of you, all living entities. But me, God says, no one knows. Na me vidu suragana prabhavam na devataha aham adirhi devanam. He says, I am not known by the rishis, I am not known by the devatas. I am, in fact, prior to all of them. And Krishna says, Ajo api san avyaya atma bhutanam ishvaro api san prakritim swam adhishtaya sambhavami atmamaya. And the Lord says, I am unborn and myself, I am without any deterioration, both soul and what appears to be my body. Whereas all living entities who are born here, they are born out of my Prakriti. And so I incarnate by my own potencies. I appear within this world by my own potencies. So then Krishna reveals why he appears within this world. And he appears within this world because these verses are well known to everybody thanks to the Bhagavad-Geeta being portrayed and the Mahabharata being portrayed on television. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijami aham. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in dharma, please note that this is about dharma. Krishna is not talking about moksha. He doesn't say that whenever people have forgotten how to attain moksha, I appear. He says, I appear whenever people have become confused about dharma. So, whenever dharma has been forgotten, there is a decline in dharma and there is a rise in adharma. At that time, I appear. Now, there is a difference between dharma and moksha. You have dharma, artha, kama, moksha, which are the purusharths that every human being engages in. Dharma means the performance of one's duties. Dharma means that which holds the universe together. Dharma of the cloud is to rain. Dharma of the wind is to blow. You have your own dharma. And your dharma, your duty, is known as your swadharma. When people are confused by adharmic philosophies, which are causing them to give up their duties in the world, when they are abandoning their duties towards their parents, towards their siblings, towards indeed their wives and children, they are giving up their duties towards their work and society. There is a rise in adharma. When people are abandoning the world and instead of adding value to the world, They have shaved their heads, wear orange robes, and go jumping around trying to tell everybody to give up their profession or their business or their job. That is a rise in adharma. Dharma means you unite with God through the performance of your duties and you glorify God additionally. So, very clearly, he points out that he comes to this earth when there is a decline in dharma and there is a rise in adharma. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. And Krishna thus declares that to deliver the saintly people, to annihilate those who are sinful and who are opposed to dharma, and to re-establish the principles of dharma so everyone may understand what is dharma and what is adharma, I come yuga after yuga. So there are many yugas: Satyug, Treta Yug, Dwapar Yug, Kali Yug. And in every yuga, the Lord appears whenever there is a decline in dharma. And this decline in dharma is making people abandon their duties, and thus the Lord appears to save the saintly people, to destroy the evildoers, and to re-establish the principles of religion. As I pointed out earlier, the Bhagavad-Gita has two aspects. One is a syncretic fusion of the Ashtikya philosophies, and the other is that this is a polemical work to condemn those philosophies that are Nastikya. So he rejects those philosophies which are based upon atheism, no belief in God, no belief in the Vedas, and all mentally concocted practices and principles of religion, especially those that pronounce the importance of giving up the world and becoming sants and arihants and becoming renunciates, becoming sadhus on the road rather than taking up the performance of their duty in a spirit of sacrifice and devotion to please God. So, very clearly, Krishna is pointing out here that this is the reason why he incarnates into this world. Now, when he comes and he appears within this world, you might think, why does he come in human form? He comes in human form so that you may identify with him, so that you, in your human form, can connect with him. That your prakriti will become divinized by seeing his apparently human form. He's not really human. In the Puranas, it is described that that The body of Krishna is not a physical body, but it is a spiritual body. And being a spiritual body, it only appears material. In the Bhagavad-Gita, Krishna declares, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina matsthani sarvabhutani na chaham te svavastita. Na cha matsthani sarvabhutani pashyama yogam aishwaryam bhuta brin na cha bhutasto mamatma bhuta bhavana. So he says, behold, Arjun, I am pervading this entire universe. And although I am pervading this entire universe, I appear standing before you as if I am apparently limited. This is very beautifully illustrated in one of the pastimes of baby Krishna. When baby Krishna's elder brother comes running to his mother and says that, hey mother, do you know that Krishna is eating mud? So immediately she comes out and picks up Krishna and puts him on her lap. And Krishna says, no mother, I am not eating mud. But all over his face there is mud. All around his mouth there is mud. So the mother says, no, I don't believe you. Open your mouth. And Krishna opens his mouth. And as Krishna opens his mouth and his mother looks inside Krishna's mouth, she is amazed. Because within Krishna's mouth, she sees the entire universe. And in that entire universe, she sees herself looking into Krishna's mouth. So Krishna, in an apparently human form, is seated on his mother's lap. But even while he's doing it, he's simultaneously pervading the universe. And he is giving his mother a glimpse that while I'm sitting on your lap like a little baby, do not think that I am restricted to this form, because I pervade the universe. This body is not a physical body. It is a transcendental spiritual body that only appears human. So Krishna clearly says, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagadavyaktamurtina matsthani sarvabhutani pashyama yogam aishwaryam bhuta brinna cha bhutasto mamatma bhuta bhavana. So he says, behold, this is my mystic power, this is my mystic opulence, that I appear standing before you as an individual, but yet at the same time I am simultaneously pervading the universe. But this is not possible for everyone to realize. So there are some qualifications for that. And these qualifications are declared in 9 and 10 verse of the 4th chapter. Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tattvata tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti swarjuna. One who understands this transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not upon leaving this body take birth in this material world again, but he attains this eternal abode. So if you begin to realize this, if you begin to understand this, if you begin to believe this, then when you leave this body, you do not come back again. But in order to understand, in order to believe, in order to have faith that this is Krishna who is the Supreme Lord, the qualifications are detailed here. वीत राग भय क्रोध मन माया माम उपाश्रितः बहवो ज्ञान तपसा पूत मद्भाव मागतः. When you become free from attachment, fear, and anger, when you are fully absorbed in me, when you take refuge in me, you will attain transcendental love for me. And many people in the past, becoming purified by knowledge of me, attained transcendental love for me. So, this is the key, that first you must purify yourself. And one purifies oneself by remembering Krishna and forgetting oneself. By performing every action in a spirit of devotion and renunciation. And if you follow Krishna and you get absorbed in him in a spirit of devotion and renunciation, then you are delivered from this world. So, you just have to learn to worship him in the right manner. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prajita Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadhaitukam. If you worship Vasudeva Bhagavati, there is Bhagavan Krishna, in the right manner, then spontaneously, naturally, effortlessly, you will find that both spiritual knowledge as well as detachment will be yours. Naham veder na tapasa na danena na cha ijjaya bhaktyatva ananya shakya aham eva vidya Arjuna. You cannot understand me by studying scripture. Naham veder na tapasa, not by performing tapasya. No danena, not by giving in charity. No cha ijjaya, not by performing ritualistic worship. You can only know me as I am through undeviated devotion and love towards me. And thus you can enter into my being from where there is no return. So I will pause here. If there are any questions, please feel free to ask me now.
Um, Thank you, Shantanu for such a lovely session. Since chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita talks about dharma, what is dharma?
So dharma is that which holds the universe together. And the universe is held together when everyone does their duties. By duties, I mean all duties. Your duties towards your parents, your duties towards your spouse, your duties towards your children, your duties towards society, your duties towards your job or profession or work, and of course, paramount, your duty towards God. So when you perform all your duties, the universe runs beautifully. Therefore, it is said, Dharma Rakshati Rakshitaha. That when you are performing your duties, when you are engaging in Dharma, Dharma will protect you. So if you do all that is expected of you by God, then you will be happy and comfortable. But when you don't practice Dharma, then all sorts of complications and problems will come into your life.
A follow-up question to this, Shantanu is that, it's a practical question, something that we generally face in our everyday life. When one is trying to perform their duty, there are other people who would, come into the way and try not to let them do their duties, be it their personal or professional life. People are insecure, people are jealous of you. So how do you deal with such a situation while also doing your duty, staying balanced, and thinking of God?
So when people come in the way of the performance of your duty, it is your job to deal with those people. And you have to deal with them in the best way possible. And how do you deal with them? You deal with them by turning to God, who will guide you what you should do. And because each problem and each situation is unique, Krishna says, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridaya deshe arjuna tistati brahmyan sarva bhutani antararudhani maya. He says, I am seated in your heart and I am driving you onward towards your destiny. You are merely seated in a machine made of material energy. Tam eva sharanam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prapshashi shashvatam. So he says, I am seated in your heart and you surrender unto me and I will lead you towards the supreme destination. So from your heart, God will guide you because every situation is unique. And nobody can actually tell you what you should do specifically under any circumstance, except you and God. No one else can come in between.
And my last question for today is, since we spoke about the sentence of the divine today, can the consciousness of divine be equated to human-like qualities, or is it
In
beyond?
fact, Krishna appears in this world to appear just like a human and he behaves like a human, and many qualities he displays are those of a human, right? So he appears like any other sentient being, although he is God. But yet, he is not Maryada Purushottam like Lord Ram. He is a Purna avatar. So therefore, he is able to lift Govardhan on the finger of his little finger of his left hand. He is able to do many, many wonderful and marvelous things. Right? So he is a Purna avatar. He is not a Maryada Purushottam. But at the same time, he behaves in many ways as a normal human being, sentient being, and then that helps us to identify with him and to connect with him.
Thank you so much for today's lovely session, Shantanu. And our viewers, do stay in touch with us and do connect with us next Thursday at 8 a.m. as we discuss yet another chapter from the Bhagavad Gita. Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna, Hari Om, Hare Krishna.